Little Boy and His Lost Kite. Part 1. In a quaint village by the hillside, there lived a little boy named Jamie. Jamie had a kite that he loved more than anything else. The kite had a vibrant shade of blue with a long, fluttering tail. Every day after school, Jamie would rush to the village's open field, which lay beside an old oak tree, and send his kite soaring high into the sky. One windy afternoon, the gusts were particularly strong. As Jamie held onto the kite string with all his might, a sudden powerful gust snapped the string right out of his hands. The kite was whisked away, flying over the hills and out of sight. Distraught, Jamie decided he would do whatever it took to retrieve his beloved kite. His first stop was Mrs. Green's farm on the other side of the hill. As he approached, he saw her sheep nibbling on some grass. "Mrs. Green! Mrs. Green!" Jamie called out, "Have you seen my kite?" Mrs. Green, a kindly old lady with spectacles that magnified her eyes, squinted at Jamie. "Oh dear," she said, "I haven't seen it, but my sheep roam all over the hills." "Maybe they've seen it?" Jamie approached one of the sheep and asked, "Sheep, sheep, have you seen my kite?" The wind took it over the hill. The sheep, chewing on its cud, lazily looked up at Jamie. "I might have seen your kite," the sheep baaed, "but I'm too hungry to remember. If you bring me a fresh bundle of clover from the meadow, I might recall." Determined, Jamie raced to the meadow, searching high and low until he found the freshest bundle of clover. Racing back to Mrs. Green's farm, he offered the clover to the sheep. After munching contentedly, the sheep finally said, "Ah, yes. I saw your kite. It got caught on Mr. Brown's fence, but the wind tugged it free and sent it toward the forest." Thanking the sheep and Mrs. Green, Jamie raced towards the forest. The tall trees loomed overhead, their branches rustling with whispers of secrets. Deep in the forest, he found a woodpecker, tapping rhythmically against a tree. "Woodpecker, woodpecker," Jamie said breathlessly, "did you see my kite pass by?" The woodpecker paused and looked at Jamie with its sharp eyes. "I did see something blue fluttering by. But my memory's a bit hazy. I have a nest to build, but I'm missing some soft feathers for it. If you find me some, I might remember where your kite went." Jamie nodded and began his quest to find soft feathers. He remembered seeing some ducks by the village pond. Maybe they had dropped a few feathers? He rushed back to the village and, after some searching, managed to gather a handful of soft feathers. As he made his way back into the forest, the sun was starting its descent, casting a golden hue over everything. Presenting the feathers to the woodpecker, Jamie waited anxiously. Once the woodpecker had inspected and approved of the feathers, it nodded. "Your kite did pass by. It floated toward the river where Mr. Otter lives. He might know." The river. That was on the other side of the forest. Even though he was tired, Jamie's spirit was undeterred. As the first stars began to twinkle, he ventured deeper into the woods, determined to reach the river and find Mr. Otter. But as the world around him grew darker, Jamie realized the forest at night was a very different place, with shadows that moved and sounds that were unfamiliar. Would he find Mr. Otter? And more importantly, would he find his lost kite? The Little Boy and His Lost Kite Part 2. Jamie's feet grew tired as he trekked through the dense forest. The moon was now high in the sky, casting silvery beams that helped light his way. As he walked, the gentle gurgling of the river grew louder, guiding him. Reaching the riverbank, Jamie saw the serene water reflecting the starry night. On a rock nearby, Mr. Otter was enjoying a quiet moment, gazing at the moonlit river. "Mr. Otter," Jamie began, trying to hide his exhaustion, "did you see a blue kite fly this way?" Mr. Otter turned his sharp eyes to Jamie and tilted his head thoughtfully. "Ah, the kite with a fluttering tail? Yes, it did pass by. It floated down the river and got caught on a branch of the old willow tree further downstream." Jamie's heart leaped with hope. "Thank you, Mr. Otter. I'll go get it." Mr. Otter, however, raised a paw. "Wait, young one. The path to the old willow tree isn't easy, especially at night. There's a tricky bend in the river, and sometimes the current can be strong. Seeing Jamie's determination, Mr. Otter sighed, "If you promise to be careful, I'll guide you there. But first, could you fetch me some shiny pebbles from the riverbed? They'll help my little ones play and learn how to catch fish in the water." Eager to get his kite back, Jamie agreed. He began searching the riverbed, feeling for smooth, shiny pebbles. After a bit of searching, he had a handful of them, which sparkled beautifully in the moonlight. Handing them over to Mr. Otter, Jamie watched as the otter's face lit up with delight. "These are perfect. All right, as promised, I'll lead the way." Navigating through the woods and along the riverbank with Mr. Otter proved challenging. They had to maneuver around thick brambles and over slippery rocks. Once, Jamie almost lost his balance, but Mr. Otter, with surprising agility, steadied him. Finally, they reached the old willow tree. Its drooping branches touched the water's surface, and there, tangled among its leaves and branches, was Jamie's beloved kite. Jamie reached out, trying to grab the kite, but it was just beyond his fingertips. He looked at Mr. Otter, desperation evident in his eyes. Mr. Otter thought for a moment, then said, "I have an idea. If you trust me, we can use this fallen log to get closer to the branch." Together, they positioned the log in the water, ensuring it was steady. With utmost caution, Jamie crawled onto it. It wobbled under his weight, but with Mr. Otter guiding and stabilizing the log, Jamie reached out once more. This time, his fingers brushed the kite's tail. A few more stretches, and he finally grasped it, pulling it into his embrace. Overwhelmed with relief and joy, Jamie looked at Mr. Otter, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Otter. I wouldn't have retrieved my kite without your help." Mr. Otter smiled, his whiskers twitching. "It was my pleasure. Remember, sometimes, all we need is a little help from our friends." As dawn began to paint the sky with hues of pink and orange, Jamie, with his kite safely in his arms and Mr. Otter by his side, made his way back to the village. However, the village was still a distance away, and the journey was not over yet. The Little Boy and His Lost Kite Part 3. As Jamie and Mr. Otter journeyed back, they began to hear faint music wafting through the trees. The sound grew louder, a mix of flutes and drums. Curious, they decided to follow it, with the hopes it might lead them back to the village faster. As they neared the source of the music, they stumbled upon a clearing lit by hundreds of fireflies, creating a mesmerizing dance of lights. In the center were creatures Jamie had only heard about in village tales, the forest fairies. They were celebrating around a shimmering crystal fountain, their wings twinkling like stars. Caught up in the spectacle, Jamie and Mr. Otter stepped into the clearing. The music stopped abruptly as every fairy turned to look at the unexpected visitors. A fairy with wings that sparkled more brilliantly than the others floated forward. "Who dares to interrupt our Moonlight Festival?" Jamie gulped but managed to find his voice. "I'm Jamie, and this is Mr. Otter. We didn't mean to intrude. We were just trying to find our way back to the village." The fairy studied them, her expression softening. "I'm Luna, the fairy queen. It's not common for humans to wander into our festivities. Tell me, how did you come to be here?" Jamie relayed his adventure, from losing his kite to meeting various creatures, and finally, how he had retrieved his kite with the help of Mr. Otter. Luna listened intently, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "A journey filled with determination and friendship," she mused. "For showing respect to the beings of the forest and for your kind heart, I grant you a boon." Jamie hesitated, then said, "Could you please guide us back to the village? I want to get home before my parents worry too much." Luna nodded. She whispered something to a fairy nearby, who fluttered away, only to return with a lantern that glowed with an ethereal light. "This lantern will guide you back to your village," Luna said, handing it to Jamie. "It will light your path and ensure safe passage." Jamie thanked her, clutching the lantern tightly. As the music resumed, Luna added, "Remember, young one, the forest is filled with mysteries. Always approach it with respect and kindness." With the lantern lighting their path, Jamie and Mr. Otter found their journey back to the village surprisingly swift. They emerged from the forest's edge just as the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow over the village rooftops. They could see some villagers in the distance, appearing to be searching for something or someone. As they got closer, Jamie recognized his parents among them, their faces etched with worry. Jamie, his mother, cried out in relief, rushing to embrace him. Amidst tearful reunions and many questions, Jamie narrated his adventure, showing them the magical lantern as proof. The villagers listened in awe, some skeptical, but many believing the boy's wondrous tale. As for Mr. Otter, he was celebrated as a village hero, and from that day on, was no longer just a creature by the river, but a friend to all. Years passed, but the tale of Jamie's adventurous night, the kindness of Mr. Otter, and the magical Moonlight Festival of the Fairies became a cherished village story, passed down from one generation to the next. And every time Jamie looked up at the sky, letting his kite soar, he remembered the lessons he learned that fateful night, of courage, friendship, and the wonders of the world around him.